Welcome to podcast number 48 for Thanks for Your Service. Our focus is on historical topics relating to the Australian military. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube and Twitter. Just search for Thanks for Your Service. Our website is www.thanksforyourservice.net, and you can also email us at info@thanksforyourservice.net. An exhibition titled the Ballarat Anzacs is being held now until the end of April at the Ballarat Mechanics Institute in Ballarat, Victoria. Let's find out more about it. Joining us from Ballarat is the Arch of Victory and Avenue of Honour Committee President, Gary Snowden. Gary, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure.
War commemoration in Ballarat is significantly represented by the Arch of Victory and the Avenue of Honour, but the Ballarat Mechanics Institute has a special exhibition that started this week called the Ballarat Anzacs. Can you tell us about the exhibition, please?
Yes, it came about 12 months ago. There was an exhibition on the western edge of Ballarat, which focused primarily on the Arch of Victory and the Avenue of Honour. But because it was on the western edge, a lot of Ballarat's people don't shop there, so I was keen to see something similar to that made accessible in the centre of town. So I approached the Mechanics Institute, which is located right in the centre of Ballarat, and they were quite willing to put on an exhibition. So we have had a good organisations have come together to put on an exhibition called Ballarat Anzacs.
Now, you also have a series of talks during April. What are some of the topics?
Yes, each of the 4 weeks that the exhibition will be open, we have a presentation. The first one this week will focus on a cross-section of stories of Ballarat servicemen. I'm always pushing the point that of the 3,801 servicemen and women who are commemorated in our Avenue of Honour, they were not factory-produced robots. They were just ordinary people who happened to be born at a time in history when they were called upon to serve their country. So some of them served with great distinction. Most of them served very courageously. Some of them tragically didn't come home. Some of them had problems adjusting to military discipline, and hence the bit of a larrikin element in the first AIF. So the first presentation will just be a cross-section of stories representing servicemen and women from Ballarat. The second one will focus on the tunnelling companies. Given Ballarat's mining history, it's no surprise that many Ballarat men who enlisted finished up in the mining corps and in tunnelling companies. So we have a woman, Yvonne Davis, who's done a great deal of research into their stories and has produced a book. She will do a presentation about the tunnellers. The third week will feature Phil Roberts, a well-known local author who did a magnificent job researching the history of Ballarat's Arch of Victory and Avenue of Honour and produced a wonderful book called Avenue of Memories. He'll do a presentation the third week, and then the final week it's back to me, and I'm looking at some of the other ways that Ballarat has remembered our Anzacs. Aside from the Arch of Victory and the Avenue of Honour, there are many other things around Ballarat that tell stories linked to the First World War and Ballarat's soldiers and nurses.
I saw Leslie Moorehead name mentioned, but who were some of the other Ballarat Anzacs?
Oh, well, Leslie Moorehead, interesting, and he was one of Ballarat's few men who've been knighted because of his military service. We'll be looking at fellows like John Messenger, who was the first Ballarat serviceman to die in the First World War. William Dunstan, Ballarat's only Victoria Cross recipient. George Mertz, who was the first Australian pilot to lose his life in the First World War. Then we had nurse Rachel Pratt, one of just a small number of Australian nurses to receive a military medal for gallantry in the face of the enemy. So there's a bit of a cross-section of those sorts of stories.
And
I should mention Albert Coates, who's Ballarat's other man who was knighted because of his military service. Like Leslie Moore said, he served in the First World War, but then served again with great distinction in the Second World War, and that's what led both Moorehead and Albert Coates to receive knighthoods.
Now, the Ballarat Anzacs exhibition has actually started. I think it started on the 4th of April. What are the opening times of the exhibition?
It's open during the Mechanics Library hours, and that's 10 a.m. till 2 p.m. Now, the Mechanics Institute is located at the bottom end of Sturt Street, which is the main avenue that runs through Ballarat. Yes, so it's a matter of walking straight in the front door. The exhibition is free. People are welcome to drift in for 5 minutes or 2 hours as they wish. And I should mention also that in addition to the presentations on Tuesdays and Thursdays, there will be a couple of us there between 12 and 2 p.m. Just to provide some research assistance for anyone who's wanting to find out a bit more about their family connections, because it's not uncommon for me to be talking to people who say, look, I know my great-grandfather served in the First World War, but I have no idea where he served or what happened to him. So we can help people to research those things.
And when does the exhibition finish?
It finishes on the 29th of April, so it finishes in the week of ANZAC Day, but it'll run through till the end of the week.
And the link, there's obviously the Ballarat Mechanics Institute has a bit of history about it as well. What's the link between the exhibition and the Institute?
Simply because the Mechanics Institute does a lot to highlight Ballarat's history, and because of its very central location, that's the reason I approached the Mechanics, and of course they do have space there that is appropriate for staging exhibitions. So the management there was quite willing to come on board in hosting this exhibition.
So the exhibition is the Ballarat Anzacs, running in Ballarat at the Ballarat Mechanics Institute until the 29th of April. And Gary, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for your interest. It's a pleasure.
That's the podcast for today. We're keen to hear your feedback. Leave a comment on our Facebook page, and if you're listening to us via iTunes or other podcast apps, please leave a review. Your reviews help others find our podcast. And you can help support this podcast via Patreon or Buy Me a Coffee. The links are on our website and our Facebook page, and your support helps us with the production of this podcast. Thanks for listening.